What if you could live your life judgment-free? Are you ready to live the unapologetic, confident life that God designed for you? If you are, then this is the place to be. Welcome to the Bold, Brave, and Sassy Show. It's time to break free of physical, spiritual, and heart-centered challenges that have held you back for way too long. Listen in for powerful tips and tools to help you break free today. Hear from leading experts, along with me, Annie Berryhill, your host and personal guide to freedom. Now it's time to live like no one's judging. Let's go. Hey there, welcome to the Bold, Brave, and Sassy Show. This is Annie Berryhill, your host and resident nutty girl. I am super excited, as usual, to share some cool new information that I've been working on. And actually, I have to say, it's one of those things that I think I've known for a long time and I've used for a long time, but I recently just put some framework around it. And it's my coaching process that has kind of been the underwriting way that I've done things for a long, long time to help people get from like the stuck place to the free place that I always talk about. And so I wanted to share a little bit about it with you. I wanted to tell you what it is and what the components are, because it's always nice to have somebody from the outside look in at your situation and to be able to sort of guide you along. But sometimes those exercises and that work can be done with ourselves and for ourselves, depending on the depth and the length of time that we've been stuck in that particular way of thinking or habitual actions or those kind of things. So I thought it would be helpful for you if I shared this framework with you so that you could start to do some of the work on your own. Not that I want to render myself useless, but I'm a giver and I want everybody to be free, and whatever that freedom is to you. And as I've spoken about in the past, if you've listened to the show, so much of where we get stuck is really in our thinking. We get in this circular path where we think the same things over and over and over, and we just believe really strongly that that's the way it is and that there's really no other way to do it. And I was making a suggestion to my husband about his coaching position as far as relating to some of his players and motivating them to do some things differently. And he said something that I think most of us say. He's like, that's not possible. I've tried and it doesn't work. And I don't know, I've gotten a little bit more tenacious as I've gotten older, and it kind of makes me laugh to hear someone say that, because I know it's not true. It's just the thing that we believe is true, and we buy into it, and then we live as if it were true. Now, a lot of things are perceptions of truth. That's a great idea, but that'll never work, is something that I always heard from my dad. I hate to even say it because it's taken me such a long time to get over it. It really has undermined a ton of things that I want to do. I'm a crazy creative person. I'm a creative problem solver. I see patterns in things. I see ways to untie things and make things come loose. That a lot of times has been a business or a product or something that was that tool to make someone get free of something. And he would constantly say to me, that's a great idea, but that'll never work. Now, on one hand, I know he did that because he was a frustrated entrepreneur. He was a sales guy. And so salespeople tend to be entrepreneurial because a lot of times they're just set off on their own and they kind of make their own rules and they go about it their own way, even if they work for a particular company and have goals. It's a little entrepreneurial. I guess Dave Ramsey would call it the employeepreneur. Danny Johnson talks about that as well. So you have that independence within the structure of a company. But I know that he had a lot of ideas that, for a variety of reasons, and probably rooted in his own lack of confidence and esteem, probably based on something somebody else told him, he really wanted to save me from the hazards of failing or being too optimistic that something would be powerful and that it would work. And so I think a lot of the things that keep us from being the things that we want to be, whether it's happy or successful or even just bringing something to fruition, the ability of someone else's words and their negative perceptions and their negative ideas or their negative attitude can get rooted in our brains, and we start to think that, like, what if they're right? What if that's true? And especially when we're talking about someone who's so influential over your life, like a parent. That's the majority of where we get our beliefs and our values and our perceptions. They're imprinted upon us. They're sort of written on our really open minds before we're 8, and they form the foundation of how we view the world going forward. And so I do laugh sometimes at this stage, and having learned all that I've learned, to be able to take that step back and observe things and say, well, I could look at this from one angle, or I could pick it up, or I could walk around it and see it from above, below, every side, an angle, and see the whole situation for what it is. And more times than not, there's another perspective that unlocks it all. It's kind of the idea, if 10 people saw a car accident from all around one intersection, everybody at a different spot, they would have a different story that they would tell, even though it was the exact same accident at the exact same time. Their perspective changes what they saw. And their beliefs and the way that their brains work also fill in blanks where there was gaps or something that they didn't understand. Their interpretation of the events comes from their own value system and their interpretations. So it's so interesting to me that that's really how life is. I have mentioned it before. It's this kind of trippy idea to think that there really is only a few things. There are only a few things that are just hard and fast truths that are unchangeable for every person. That idea that we're born and we're going to die. Everybody's going to die. It doesn't matter how rich or smart or beautiful or successful, how any of those things. Everybody's going to come to the end of their lifespan. And gravity. Those are things that are indisputable. We can argue about a lot of stuff, but we cannot argue that gravity doesn't work the same for every person. So I think it's really interesting to understand perspective and understand the interpretations that we make based on our perspectives. So with that in mind, I wanted to share some of this framework with you so that the next time you are feeling stuck and you are feeling frustrated because here you are at the same old place again and you can't seem to figure out how to get, through it. This can possibly help you if you can remember to do this, because it's part analysis and part action. Because I'm an action girl. I don't feel like just thinking about things all the time and analyzing things has all the value. And then taking willy-nilly action also doesn't have all the value. You can combine the two, where you take action that makes sense and will move you efficiently towards what it is you want. I'm also very efficient. I don't like to waste time or energy or money. Let's do this the simplest way and the one that conserves the most energy and resources. It's kind of like evolving as a human being. We had to be a little bit thrifty on things like that, but not because you're cheap, just because I like to get to the end of things really quickly. Work first, play later. That's my motto. So I'm going to share this framework with you, and I really hope that you can take some notes. I'll put together a little sheet that is an overview for you, and then you can integrate it into your life. And of course, I'd always love to hear how it helped you, but it's the 5D framework. So the first step in this is to dig in. Now, this can be scary for a lot of people because you're basically going to be an emotional anthropologist. And what that means is you are going to do some deep digging into your own mind and your own soul. You're going to look for the buried clues in your lifetime, over your lifeline. And these can be repetitive emotions, beliefs, perspectives, agreements that may be at the root of what's been blocking you or what you feel like's blocking you. Now, I tend to be a really intuitive person for myself and for other people. And what usually happens for me when I dig into something, when I'm really wanting to look and see what the problem is and be honest with myself, because there probably are things that I haven't dealt with that I need to deal with. But there's also things that I've been looking at that are incorrect, that I've attached value and interpretation to that actually aren't the reality of it. But in my intuitiveness, what I feel like always happens when I dig in and I do that, looking at the different emotions and beliefs, this thing that happens, like when I hit it, when I know it's the thing, it clicks. And it's almost like, teeth on a zipper. where they click together and they fit. And you kind of know, and you're like, yep, that's exactly it. A lot of times for me, it was that statement from my dad, that's a great idea, that'll never work. So I would do all this work and I would accomplish all this stuff. And right before I got to the finish line, it'd be like I'd bail out, right? So is that fear of success, fear of failure? I don't know, but it sure matches with, that's a great idea, but that'll never work. I run with a great idea, but then I believe that'll never work. And I pull off before that can actually happen because he's already warned me, right? And so digging in and identifying the statements that you've believed or the emotions or the perspectives. In the example of my husband, well, there's nobody like that. There's nobody who will do that, or whatever the statement was, that just won't work. And he was just really hard and fast, and that was it, and that was the absolute, and that was the end of the line. He wasn't going to pursue it anymore. But in reality is, maybe he had to look at it from another perspective. He had to look for something else in a person to be able to get the thing done that he wanted to do. So when you dig in, you may want to keep a journal, and you may want to say, hey, listen, so I have this situation where I know that I like the gym. I understand that the gym is good for me and my body and my health goals. But every single time I try to go, there's something else that gets in my way. And this actually comes from a client situation. And so we had to dig in, like, what is it really? Because she can say it's the kids, it's responsibilities, it's all these other things that she's putting first. But doesn't that sound like a smokescreen? That's a smokescreen, right? There's making excuses for not doing something is good for you and that you actually want to do. There's something else at work here. So that's the point where you dig in, trying to find out what the emotion, the belief, the perspective, the illusion, the clue is about why you're getting blocked. So the second step is to actually discover it. And when you do the digging, you're going to figure out something. And when you do, I want you to notice and name it. You're going to say, I see, that's me being a martyr, right? So somewhere in my belief system or somewhere in my thinking, I've put a value on being a martyr. So, okay, I see, I'm being a martyr about that. So notice and name that. And again, look at it from all sides. Where did this martyrdom come from? When did I start believing that this was an important way to operate? How has it served me? What is it doing to keep me? And look at all the patterns and habits and reactions that have stemmed from that thing that you've noticed and named. Okay, so the third step is to decide. Now you're armed with this clarity, this understanding. You see exactly what this thing is that's in your way. And now you have to decide if you are truly ready, willing, and able to do something about it. And there's always a risk. Change involves pain to some degree. And for many people, being uncomfortable is a pain worth avoiding. And we are human beings. Our bodies naturally crave homeostasis. That's constant temperature, constant function, right? We're always in the pursuit of that without even trying. And it works in our psyche. It works in our whole lives that we strive for comfort, which is another way of saying we strive for safety. We may be ready, like my client was ready to go to the gym. She was willing to go to the gym, but for some reason she wasn't able. Now, she wasn't able because she was in a wheelchair, she was hurt, or she was sick. There was something else blocking her. So all three of those things have to exist at the same time and be together, ready, willing, and able to make that decision that you're ready to move this out of the way or to get out of the way of this thing. You have to think, is there a workaround for this? Is there a rewrite? Or is it just a flat out dismissal and saying goodbye to it? If you've not listened to my episodes before and my show before, there's a few times where I mention my breakup with alcohol. And I say to people, I didn't get sober because I wasn't drunk. I just was sick of alcohol having some say over the patterns and behaviors in my life. And I basically kicked that sucker out. I broke up with him. That's what I always say. I broke up with alcohol. Just gone. And so maybe that's something that you have to do in that decision-making process. You have to rewrite the tapes. You have to figure out a way to get around it. At times when I've been blocked, people have asked me, like, what keeps you from being, successful in this particular field? And I said, I don't know, but in my mind's eye, I see it as this like monolith, this thing that was blocking me. And I couldn't move it. I couldn't knock it down. I couldn't climb it. I couldn't get around it. I couldn't dig under it. There was every preposition you could think of that I was not able to do to this thing, right? Because it was deeply rooted. It was sky high and tall. It was impermeable. It was strong. It was, all those things. And those literally are like the visual manifestation of some of those deep rooted beliefs and values and perspectives and agreements that we've made. So in the decision-making process, being ready, willing, and able, and then looking at it for all sides, right? To see what you're really dealing with. The next step, number 4, is design. Once you get past the decision place where you say, yes, it's time, I'm not living like this anymore, you have to design a strategy for getting free, for doing the work. Now, if you know anything about the way that habits work, habit loops in our own minds are created for efficiency of our brain. Because if you think about it, if you had to learn to drive every time you got behind the steering wheel, that would be so exhausting for your brain. If you had to learn to brush your teeth and go to the bathroom and wash your hair in the shower and any of the repetitive tasks that we do nearly without thinking, it really would be taxing on our brains. And now, as it is, our brains already use up 25% of the energy that we take in every day. So that's a quarter. And when you look at the size of your head, that's a pretty big demand. Imagine if we didn't have habits. So habits have their place, right? Efficiency, safety, it's pure survival. That's the oldest part of our brain where habits are built, right? It goes back to, way before modern conveniences, and it will always be there. But in the design, we have to understand what we're dealing with and what will work. We also have to know what we're dealing with within ourselves. So for example, I recently met a young woman. She's about 20, I think she's 23 years old. And we were chatting at the lake, and I was chatting with she and her mom. I just asked her, I said, well, what do you think, what one thing that you could do would most impact your health or get you to your fitness goals or your health goals? And she said, oh, by far giving up soda. And I thought, well, I actually don't know a lot of people who drink a lot of soda, and that's not a criticism. I'm just in a world where mostly we drink sparkling water at this point because we get the bubbles and we don't need to deal with the sugar. So, no judgment. Okay, fine. So why are you not quitting sugar or sodas? And she goes, I just love sodas. And I said, okay, I get it. I love chocolate. I understand the obsession. And, a little bit further questioning down the road, I was picking up cues about how she acted, like probably what her way of going about her business is. Super confident young woman, very smart, pretty accomplished, pretty worldly, had moved a lot, but had been around the world. So she was very confident, very strong-willed. In my experience, being a strong-willed person, raising strong-willed people, and also being around strong-willed people, I know that we are often our own worst enemy because as much as we're strong with other people, we can be really strong with ourselves. I said, one of the things that I see a lot, and maybe this happens to you and you can tell me, is as soon as somebody tells you what to do, automatically you don't want to do it. And she goes, yeah. And I go, do you really want to quit soda? And she goes, no. You know it's a good idea, but you're not really ready. And if you even tell you, hey, you need to quit quit soda, then you're immediately going to rebel against that because no one tells you what to do, not even you. So when you're designing your plan, you have to keep in mind what works for you, what motivates you. I would bet you dollars to donuts if there was a nice, handsome, studly young man courting her, she might be more motivated just to, cut back a little bit on the sodas. That would change her physique a little bit. I think she might be motivated by something outside of herself. Or when she decided there was something, maybe she was going to get married and she wanted to fit into a wedding dress or something like that. She needed an external motivator. But the key is to understand what will really get you, not just surface motivated. That's that idea of, you got to shower frequently to keep the stink off. That's sometimes how people view motivation. You have to renew it. But when you understand the deep thing that's driving you, you can design a plan that's in alignment with that speeds you down the road instead of creates more trouble. Because when you create designs and ideas and plans for getting around the things that are blocking you with all this new knowledge, and you don't go about it in a way that is with the flow of it, that works with your personality, that you can get on board with, then you actually end up making yourself feel like a failure. Because when you don't accomplish it, because you've set yourself up in the wrong way, you fail, or you perceive it as failing. And now comes the rest of it. Throw the baby out with the bathwater. Why even try? I'm never going to do it. It's never going to happen for me. I don't deserve it, blah, 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 blah. And now you get all the negative self-talk that's lurking in your lizard brain that wants to keep you safe. Yes, come back. Come back to what you've always been. Come back to the safety zone, you know? It's really so amazing when we take the time to be able to identify it and see it for what it is, right? And we don't even have to apply judgment to it. I mean, it's a bad thing if we're being restricted. It's a good thing if we're being kept safe from our stupid decisions. And we have to have the discernment to know which is which. So in the design process, we have to know what will allow us to move forward and will go with our flow and keep us steady, like this deeper reason why we will do this. But in that design, we have to create a ridiculously simple and easy step that we can do over and over. Like, this is so easy and so simple that it's like embarrassing to you. If somebody says, hey, you're dieting, you're on this plan, and you're like, I'm doing this. And they say, well, what are you doing? And they're expecting you to say how you're counting your macros, you're weighing and measuring your food, you're working out 3 times a day, you're doing cardio, you're lifting weights, you're going to CrossFit, you're going to Orange Theory, you're doing all these things. And you're like, well, you know what I'm doing? I'm setting a timer to eat my meal in 10 minutes or more. I'm eating slower. And that's all you do. And people are like, that's it? That seems so silly and so easy and so like unaggressive. But think about it. If we are fighting change or uncomfortable with change, but we know we're dedicated to getting over those hurdles and those humps, we can't make things so big and so hard that we quit way before we're even to the finish line. Why not bring the finish line to us? It may be as simple as, setting a timer. Let's say you're learning to meditate, or to really just clear your thoughts, or to spend some time in just quiet reflection with God. I have a hard time quieting down my mind. Meditation is not a really, really strong skill for me because I am very active in my mind. I'm a very, busy person. I like to move. But here's the thing. I was challenged to do this by people who are coaching me to spend 5 minutes concentrating on one thing. Literally set a timer. Okay, that sounds really dumb. 5 minutes. Now, 5 minutes in meditation or holding your breath or eating disgusting food or, changing baby diapers is a long time. But 5 minutes is not a long time when it's Christmas morning or in the lifespan of your kids who are all of a sudden grown up. So 5 minutes. And I have to carve it out and write it down on my calendar and be reminded every day that for 5 minutes, I'm going to literally, and this is what I had to do. I focused on one thing outside my balcony. It actually is this really cool leaf. And I started focusing on it, but I found that as I was focusing on it, I was talking to myself. I was, talking about the outline and the colors and the way it was moving. And so I was still talking. There was still this stuff going on. And it wasn't until I decided to do a measured breathing that I could stop the voices in my head and focus only on the leaf. I was breathing in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathing out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, really slow. And I could only focus on those things, right? So that sounds so easy, but to do it consistently is maybe where the challenge is, but that's also where the magic is. Let's set ourselves up to win so ridiculously simple and easy that we can do it consistently day in and day out. And then number 5 kind of goes along with what I've been saying about the design process is, of course, you have to do it. You have to practice that simple and easy step so that it becomes the new way of thinking, the new way of spending your morning. And you have to commit to that process of change. And I will tell you, when you make things so simple and easy, it's kind of like it's a slam dunk. You're like, yeah, I'm playing basketball on a Little Tikes basketball hoop. Of course, put it over my head and jump it. Of course I can do that. Slam dunk, right? Little kids can't do it because they're not there yet. Let's practice something so easy and simple that we get in the mode of winning. Now, once you've done that for a couple of weeks, 14 days or so, it's not completely changing your habit, but then you can ratchet it up. Now maybe you're doing that 5-minute meditation twice a day, or maybe you've stretched it to 7 minutes, right? To make it ridiculously easy and simple that you almost can't feel the changes happening. But over time, you're going to look back and see you've come a long way, baby. So that is really my 5D process and framework for getting out of your own way. Now, sometimes you can do this on your own. A lot of times you need help. And of course, that's what I do with people, which is like a shameless plug. But at the same time, know that if this framework doesn't work for you the first time you try it, don't give up. You can still do this. There's value in each one of those steps. Just digging in and being an emotional anthropologist. It's okay to look at your emotions and to not be afraid. What they say is when you fight things, it wears you down and you eventually lose to it. So if you keep fighting your emotions, instead of just looking at the emotions, knowing that the emotions are an indication of something that's unresolved or some belief that's jacked up and is leading you astray and causing you to feel that, right? There's so much power in that. And that's just another way of being brave, right? And being bold. And then, the sassy part of this is being unapologetic and confident. Like when we look at who we are and how we're wired and what we believe and what we've done and how we've gone through our life so far, warts and all, we all make mistakes. There's ugliness and there's defeat and there's things we wish we didn't do. Like, I can't change it. So I can't live in a world of guilt and shame anymore. I just have to be unapologetic and say, look, I was finding my way and you were finding your way and it's okay. But my goal is always to help people progress because we're here for a reason. And as long as you're breathing, you have the opportunity to just keep evolving into this person that God has designed you to be. And all of it works. And it's powerful when you allow him to come on this journey with you, to be able to look deep inside yourself and say, Lord, reveal this to me. Look inside my heart and show me those ugly places that you've already forgiven me for and set me free from, that I'm holding on to, that are leading me into muddy waters and deep pits of quicksand that I keep getting stuck in. It's there. The answers are there. The answers are within us. And while we can do some of this work by ourselves, sometimes we need a friend or a coach or someone who can get to know us and listen to help us through. But God is always with us. And he is faithful to walk this journey with us because he says he never leaves us and he never gives up on us. And even if we give up on ourselves, he never does. And that's really encouraging to me that this is data. And while you may have to go through emotions and feelings and realizations, it's data. It's data for you to take and use to make a plan to make your life different from the moment of awareness and realization. And it is powerful stuff. So I hope that you enjoy this. I will have a quick one sheet that just describes the steps and a little bit of how to do it. And I look forward to your feedback. You can find me on Facebook, you can find me on Instagram, and I'd love to hear what's going on with you using this process. And of course, if you ever want to just bounce it off somebody else, there's ways to get in touch with me for that, and I love going through it with people. So for now, this is Annie Berryhill with the Bold, Brave, and Sassy Show. I'm so happy that you could spend this time with me today, and I hope it's blessed you and encouraged you and given you just the boldness and the courage and the sassiness to go live your extraordinary life, the one that God designed before you even popped out and started breathing on this planet. All right, everybody. Love you. Love you tons. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next time.